Hi everyone, and thank you very much for filling the room. We weren't clear how many people are coming. At first I would like to introduce our partners of this challenge. We start with Kerstin Eichmann from E.ON, Jan Pellis from Stedin, and we have also some other partners from Alianda and Enpuls here in the room, and of course our main partner Engie, Etienne. So how this deep dive the schedule for this deep dive is I will dive deep in the presentation for 15 minutes, and then we have a panel where we will open up for questions afterwards, and then at the end a small kind of value propositions for the team to apply for this track. So let me then dive into the challenge that we have and we hope you help us solving. I wanted to start with a general presentation of the energy market, but looking into this crowd and seeing many familiar faces, immediately a question pops up. Could you please raise your hand who is not working in the energy market? Okay, nearly half, nearly 50%, which is a very positive surprise to me. I'm very happy about it. So, because you are here, I will have to explain this, because all the people which work in energy market, they know that the market is transforming. The value in the energy market is switching behind the meter because it's getting cheaper and cheaper to produce behind the meter, and there is more flexibility hitting the market. The market, though, the energy market design wasn't designed for this. It was designed as a one-way street. And so this is one transformation we see, and this transformation will only accelerate in the next few years. So on the other side, we look at the current market design, and there is a clear kind of divide between who can participate in the market in which form. And one of the biggest elephants in the room, the white elephant in the room in the market, in energy markets, is why isn't it, managed in a better way than now or more real time? And the biggest problem that there is because people cannot agree upon a single platform that is managing the market, because that would be the most crucial point of attack of the system. And therefore, still till now, we have communications between the different stakeholders, grid operators and energy market players and so forth, in very kind of rudimentary forms, XLS files and so forth. And so we believe, and we are convinced with our partners, that a future system, what we call kind of a bit of abstract energy singularity, the future system needs to be inclusive, meaning that if the final consumers are getting the power, they must be enabled to trade. They must have the same possibilities to participate in the market as any other trader. And therefore, there is a lot of thresholds to join the markets which need to be lowered. But for this to happen, a lot of the complexity of the energy market needs to be absorbed somewhere. And this is one of the challenges. So looking at such a market design, it's obvious it has to be a bottom-up agent-based market design. And so we have been actually looking at this challenge since a couple of years, and we have been, maybe some of you know the Energy Web Foundation. This is kind of one of the, it's a non-profit foundation we co-founded with some other partners and a lot of utilities and startups which joined us. And there it was actually out of one working group that this market design was kind of established. And it's an open source framework that we're looking at. So there is many different words for such an agent-based bottom-up market design. Some people call it layered energy market, like our partner Stedin. Some people in US call it fractal grid or cellular systems in Germany. And the principle is usually always the same. And the principles, if you're from the energy market, you'll see it's not much different than the regulation right now, because we have balancing groups in the markets right now where every trader has to report their forecast, what they plan to trade, and then also report what actually happened. Now, how we look at the agent-based market design is actually exactly the same, balancing groups on top of each other, whereas each balancing group has an internal exchange for different type of markets. Spot markets, future markets, balancing markets, name it, basically depending on what data is available in the local market. And so we have actually designed such a simulation framework where it is possible to set up markets very easily. It's a very modular system, and you can place the markets either as the grid topography or by zonal. So we had this discussion a lot, is it zonal pricing or nodal pricing and so forth. So we have a tool to create digital twins, but what we haven't done so far is create the agents which bring chaos into the system, and this is one of the challenges that we have. So meaning we have created a framework that can absorb the complexity of the energy market in the exchanges, and so this open source tool framework is available on d3a.io right now. And so you can model your grid. You basically place markets and you place the agents which trade on the markets. Then you can upload your own strategy or your own loads and so forth. You can hit the simulation button and the market starts to function, and then you can go back, you can start to optimize. So the agents and the load curves that we have up there now is all template agents, very simple, all again open source. Now we want to take this simulation environment, and we have a couple of partners also sitting in this room which have provided us data that is anonymized data of digital twins. We have put the digital twins into the simulation environment, and now we want to have data scientists to bring the real to train their agents, intelligence, and feedback, so optimize for different kind of instances in this market design. And this is somewhere where I will go a bit deeper. So the total challenges actually result from the desire to make such a market design reality. And so meaning we have the simulation environment now, but for the next step, what we need is we now need to test the chaos in it, meaning different trading strategies, trading bots, which will be trading on behalf of final consumer or prosumer, because nobody on the world will be sitting there and trading for €100 expenditure per month or prosumer. They will be not trading. They would rather take the trading strategy of some of the best data scientists. And so on the one side, it's the agents trading in the spot markets. On the other side, because to have a real-time market where everyone participates, it's important that also the grid operator has an option to participate in the market. And here we have designed an API for the grid operators where they can actually test. So there is a lot of problems on the grid side if there is too much trading happening, congestion management and so forth. So there is an API to test flexible tariffs on nodal or zonal pricing to see if through price setting for the tariff, congestion can be avoided. So one challenge is basically about trading bots to reach KPIs through an API for the data scientist and the grid operator. So the grid operators are hereby represented from E.ON side Edis, from Stedin, Alianda and Npuls. So we have 4 DSOs, 1 from Germany and 3 from Netherlands. And this team is, so to say, set already. We're now looking for 5 teams on the data science side, on the one to develop the agents, but also this challenge has 2 sides. One is very specific; it's the trading agents, and there is a couple of games that we have designed for optimization purposes. But then there is also a broader challenge, to which I will come a bit later. So let me go deeper a bit into the specific challenge. So there is in this first stream, in the first challenge that we have, where we're looking for 5 teams, we, as said before, we want you get data, train your algorithms, and try to optimize on price. So if you would look in a real scenario, usually the data scientists or the AI should forecast demand, supply, human input, weather, and price. So it's usually it will be 5 variables. And we have a simulation scenario, so we don't have random happening demand and supply curves. So we will feed you these right before the spot market is happening. So meaning we are simplifying the simulation. We want you to hit on the right price first. So this is the biggest variable that you need to figure out at this challenge first. how to hit on the right price. The market design that we have here, the clearing mechanism is pay as bid and pay as clear. We will be releasing a lot of documentation on that in March, so that you can actually come with prepared trading agents already, with that you're not coming with not prepared. And you have to reach specific KPIs. I want to give you a taste of the game that we kind of have prepared. So this is again back to the agents. So on the one side, it's the agents that represent houses or specific devices, power plant, and so forth. So there is an API from the exchange. You basically get this data. You train your AI, and you can set bids and asks. And then after the slot, every time you get you made a deal and so forth, and so there is KPIs you need to reach. On the same side, the grid operator sees what's happening there, how much trade is happening, are the maximum thresholds on the nodes being crossed or not, or in the zone, so they can set different type of tariffs. And the games on the KPIs, think of who was at the hackathon already before? Hands up. So it's a very large factory, the location. It's a huge room. And so we get a very large wall where we will have, I guess it's like maybe 30 times 10 meter, live projection of all data happening. And we have 10 tables sitting in front of it. And so it will be like a round-based thing. So at first we will say like team 1 till 2, they have now the task to optimize a specific household. So they will register for those APIs, they will get the data, and they will train, and we will see in real time what's happening. Everyone will be seeing in real time what's happening. So we will have sandbox at the beginning, training, then a single household, then separate communities. And so there we have a lot of variables then that we can actually give teams the task to optimize a whole community. And then we can connect while the simulation is running to another community to see how actually the community is balancing themselves. So there is a lot of instances that could be optimized in this whole scenario. Now, the detailed game design, so to say, for the agents, for the data scientists, will be done tomorrow with our partners. So we have the variables now. Tomorrow we hopefully come to a conclusion how we will design this specific game to find out the best algorithms. And then maybe a bit more data. So optimize a house, you get those curves, you get kind of demand and supply as a data point. Shortly ahead, you need to buy so much, and then you need to set the right price. So again, for now, it's mostly about getting the right price or the cheapest price. Then you have a community. There is a lot of KPIs that you need to fill, and then it's basically competition who trades the best. And then, of course, once we go into higher hierarchies, you have different communities, and here we have a kind of Grönement, a community here from Den Haag. Once you start to trade between other communities, this number shows or represents kind of how much the grid fee is being taken from each trade. So the grid operator can actually vary the grid fees as the trading is happening to avoid congestion management. And so that's where we then bring multi-party together to see, can we get, does this system break or does it make sense? Because there is a lot of questions that need to be answered. If there is a flexible tariff, does it create, let's say for non-smart houses, does it create, how to say this?
Unequalness?
Yeah, unequalness, exactly. And so all of that we can now simulate, all the theses, and that's what we want to do. Now, on the first stream, there is also a broader challenge. So this is very specific. This is a very specific game. But how we look at the whole problem, or how that we have right now, the challenge number 1 and challenge number 2 is we actually, as I said before, on the one side, through the market design, we want to absorb complexity. Open source, you can stack markets on top of each other. On the second step, we want to crowdsource an intelligence. We want to enable that data scientists can participate, can train their algorithm feedback. There is a very interesting business model out there. If I optimize for someone, maybe we can share the optimization. Then we want to enable actually coming the final consumer insight, which is also a variable to the trading strategy. But the biggest problem that we have is actually how do we get the data inside? And this is also one of the challenges that Vattenfall has. So the question here is, how can we create, there is so many different scenarios out there. You have aggregators with a lot of assets out there. You have open source, you have open source hardware there. So there is a lot of things where you could actually place the agents, and we don't want to answer this question. We want the teams to come up with an architecture here. So we will have Energy Web Foundation coming, proposing a decentralized asset registry, also open source. We're talking to Ocean Protocol, how to share data and compute and so forth. And this is the broader part of the challenge. Yeah. That's why I leave it like that, not to go into specifics. And now actually my favorite challenge, which is, how would it feel, So in Germany we have roughly, 300 energy traders? I think roughly the number, yeah, more or less. Now think if there is, 40 million enabled to do one thing, is they can define from who they get electricity, at what price, when, and they can do the payment. And how would it feel like? And we have been doing a lot of research the last half a year. We have been looking at all kinds of applications that are out there, communities and so forth, trying to understand what is it that really, is it really interesting to people? Because, the final result is people are not interested in energy at all. They don't have a relationship. There is no relationship. It doesn't matter. And I believe we can prove the opposite. And so what we will actually do in this challenge, we will dump our full research of the last half a year up on you and give all our ideas to you. And we want to find 4 teams which, together with us, with all our ideas, and maybe you can even supersede those ideas, design something that we can transform energy into a form of communication. And I want to give you some little ideas where this might go. So the last thing, I think, so I've been here, I'll go just deeper into this application. So in our research, if we look at all the applications out there, it's usually a wallet. You can maybe control your devices at your home, or you can see some kind of statistics. This is majority of the apps out there. This is the disaggregation devices and so forth, and that is all good, and it's necessary, but the question is, how often do you use it? I mean, is it really, there is different type of users. If you're kind of a geek and you have a PV at home and a battery or whatever you have, then you're interested about it. But the average Joe is not interested at all about it. Yeah. Because there is, what's the purpose? Is just lowering the bill, or is just showing off out there? So, and then we investigated what kind of stakeholders out there actually. Is it me personally? Is it the asset? Then we have personal network community, like my brothers, my sisters, my family. And then also kind of the local community level, like in Grünemund. We structured them in different kind of levels, different needs. We built up a lot of user stories. We talked to them. And then the question was, the result was basically, still, nobody's really interested about electricity. And so we had an idea, looking at all the different chat forums and specifically looking at TikTok. Why did TikTok go viral? And it's very simple. There is like many other platforms, there is a content creation tool, and there is an ecosystem that is feeding itself, creating memes. Memes are being copied and so forth. And the question we ask ourselves, can we utilize same things to actually enable those different stakeholders getting better in what they're doing? Can we create memes? How can we utilize the same method? And the idea came up, well, there probably needs to be some kind of content creation tool that is combining the flow of electricity, payment with information. And so we called it a mini PPA modeler. think of a trading bot, of a chat bot, and imagine you have feeds in whatever platform you're using, and you like the feed, it's a meme, it's in your local community, and instead of just liking it and showing everyone else what you actually like, you actually send electricity there, a micropayment or something like this. So not only sharing information, but doing things. And this can go in optimizing your home, getting recommendations from neighbors how to optimize, or how to bring your family. Maybe you don't even care about rational decisions. You just want to have support your family. So you take only the electricity from your family. So there is, all of that is untapped, this potential. And so the question is, to tap this potential, we have been looking at apps, and most apps that are out there, they make deterministic proposals. And we don't want to make deterministic proposals for user stories. Therefore, we have to create a tool that enables a lot of user stories. And then, of course, when you have created content, share it in different forms. Yeah. And there fell a couple of user stories. And we have to look at the user stories from emotional perspective, social, economic perspective, and then, of course, on the different levels. Is it only for me personally, with my family or my personal social network, or local community? And so, I don't know, in the crypto space, there is this meme, you can send a beer and it's in form of crypto, like tipping. Why not with electricity? Doing good action versus, if I live close to a park, if people would clean it, and they will see I clean it against energy, and I see that they clean, people film them, I'd be happy to tip it with energy, with green energy. Why can't I do this? So there is a lot of stories that we haven't figured out, and we have, as I said, I think we ourselves maybe came up with over 100 user stories, which is like, why would you even do this? Because, at the end, what we want to achieve that this is transforming the energy, it's accelerating the energy transition. That there is more renewables happening, and so forth. And therefore, this thing needs to go viral. And so, if we have 4 teams that come up even with 3 good applications, I'd be interested that those become reality, even all 3 of them. So, because we don't know what's going to be viral until it goes viral. Yeah. So, that's basically from my side. And now we have 20 minutes on the panel. Yes. Could you maybe shortly introduce yourself and give a perspective of E.ON? Because, to the panel that we have sitting here before we dive in is actually a very interesting combination of innovators. So I know Key since many years, and she has worked at Innogy and now at E.ON. I think Innogy was one of the most advanced in terms of machine-to-machine economy and kind of networks. How do you,
Yeah, so happy to give you a little bit of a framing, so what we have done at Innogy and why we are also excited to participate in this challenge together with Ewald. So at Innogy we have taken this topic of decentralized ledger protocols very seriously since 2015-16 already, where we heavily invested in blockchain startups. And now at E.ON, I'm responsible for the strategic partnership topic, meaning I'm also looking into who are the potential partners that are necessary to build the energy system of the future. So having said that, we think at Innogy and at the innovation setup of E.ON that having those new protocols, neutral IT protocols, is necessary to build up systems like that. We are today also excited to be here because from the DSO perspective, so I'm looking into the angle of my new colleagues from the EDIS team in Berlin. we are excited to learn how trading strategies could also incorporate the idea of new local products, for example, as Ed said. We want to make energy sexy again. So what is necessary? What kind of attributes are necessary that people treat energy more in a different way? So, for example, we know that we have to find a way how to incentivize the local usage of energy. And here, maybe the price is one attribute, but it could also be more the incentivization of local green energy. So maybe I'm incentivized to use the wind park next door, so that we have this kind of local relationship between consumption of local green energy. Or we could also think about, let's compare what we've seen in the airplane world. So we have domestic flights, you have the intercontinental flights, and we could think of having more local transit tariffs to incentivize when energy is traded only on a small distance, for example. So this is something I want to give you as our thinking. We really want you to think in creative modes, how dynamic pricing, emotional-based pricing could work, and I think that's. I
know I would have one more question to you, Keith, which is, looking at the energy market and kind of the big inertia, and specifically kind of the difficulty to innovate because there is different regulation in every market. I'd like to have your opinion about the timing of something like this, because we know the inertia in Germany and how fast regulation is changing. What do you think, timing-wise, such a system could?
Yeah, so I can tell you we started to look into P2P energy trading, for example, already in 2016 and 17, using a Tendermint-based Ethereum blockchain. It was really hard back then to integrate our first smart contracts into a legacy backend system of a DSO. And also from a technical point of view, it was hard to get the expected transaction throughput. Speed was still an issue. So back then, technical-wise, it was challenging. I would say from a regulatory point of view, or the Fed-in tariff, it was also hard to compete against the Fed-in tariff back then. I mean, 2016, yeah. So if I combine the technical development, now that we have the EWF chain, Polkadot, different interoperability chains, I see that now the tech space, the regulatory framework, and also the business perspective with having the first assets of 6,000 wind assets that where the subsidy expires end of 2020. So there is a demand to have a post-Fed-in tariff system. So now is the time, I think, where you guys and ladies, you're meant to think about new community solutions. So now is the time.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Key. And now actually, talking about viability of peer-to-peer networks or local energy markets, I have to go to Jan, because as actually Etienne told me a couple of times, for example, such a system in France would only make sense where the grid would not be accounted as a flat rate, but only what you use, because through such system you could actually show how much you use of the grid. And only that makes local kind of systems economically more feasible. So what I was enormously surprised, I think you were one of the first DSOs I met in the market, and who was talking about layered energy markets, and that was like 3 years ago already or something. What is the rationale from your side pushing into this direction? I mean, you have a pretty comfortable life, no, as a DSO?
Well, maybe it's good to start at that point, our comfortable life, which disappeared for some years ago. Maybe good to say here on behalf also of Alliander and Pellis. We are together in this challenge. I think we as DSOs face a problem already now. So we saw those nice tiny houses here on the chart, but When the transition is taking place, every house, the peak load of the house will go up 2 to 4 times what we are used to today. Our grids are not designed for that. So we are going to have congestion in our grids. And if you only look at the staging grid in the Netherlands, which is about 1/3 of the Netherlands, it's over 40,000 kilometers of cable we have to replace in 15 years if we wouldn't do anything smart. So more than one round of cable around the Earth to solve it in the way we were used to work. But I think, and that's what we need you for, we want to do that smarter. How can we use all the developments and the positive flow and energy from our customers to do it different? So what we saw about 3 years ago, we got questions from initiatives like Groene Mint, Hoogdalem, and other areas in our in staging area that said, well, we want to trade energy with each other. We have a lot of solar panels. How can we do that? And our first reaction was a bit like a DSO would react, defensive. But then we looked a bit deeper, so this is a chance for us, because if we can work together with those local initiatives and we can build a model together where also the grid has a place and we can apply smart tariffs of other ways that also incentivize to be good for the grid and to lower the peaks by working together on a local level, those local initiatives are not a risk but a chance for us. So that's why we are in, and that's why, well, I think this unique cooperation and simulation environment will also help us further to test such environments. And well, I think we need you to come with the smart solutions for trading in the market, grid tariffs, and let it all work together. And I think maybe one point good to mention is we're now doing some experiments, and we have always said we like to work in the current regulation or close to the current regulation, because then it's scalable. It's quite easy to think of a system that might work in 2050, which is not useful for us. So I think it's part of the challenge to come with solutions that fit or are very close to current regulation. And of course, we will bring in our expertise to help with that.
Thanks a lot, Jan. And coming to Etienne. Etienne, you represent a very large corporation with activities all around the globe. And I remember the couple discussions that we had, you know, I can't even recall how many peer-to-peer activities or trials you had around the globe. And you told me about Netherlands and Australia and other a lot in France and so forth. So for me, the question is, you know, and maybe you could maybe highlight this point while I kind of go deeper, would be we have seen a lot of projects out there, but it's always kind of this single project where it takes ages to convince everyone, then join into this. But you know, for me, the question is, how can you scale that? You know, and what are the problems in scaling this? Could you maybe highlight this from this perspective?
Yes. Okay. Yes, we have been thinking about these kinds of systems for a number of years. About 4 years ago, we recognized that our previous activity, which was producing centrally and then retailing electricity, distributing, selling, was no longer going to be our main activity. So we essentially sold off all our coal, many of our gas-fired power stations. We wrote off about 15 billion of assets, centralized. And we tried to reinvest those 15 billions into other activities, basically service-based, to manage for our clients the complexity that was going to happen. So we are convinced that we are going to be less and less a producer, supplier, and more energy flow manager, without being DSOs. But managing the complexity that happens at local level for our clients. In fact, we organized our strategy as helping our clients to go towards their own zero carbon solutions, being zero carbon ourselves as much as possible, but also for our clients. And so we experimented with a number of concepts, and we are convinced that managing the local complexity will be done mostly with the concept of energy communities, and meaning that a number of people will agree among themselves to exchange energy. It can be peer-to-peer, it can be more community-like exchanges. And if you want to exchange with somebody in your community, at some level, you are going to use a market mechanism, because you are going to propose your energy or propose to consume for some price, and therefore you are going to set price, you are going to find counterparts and so on. So it's basically market mechanisms. So that's why we are interested. And we did some experiments with the current framework of data collecting, which was not so optimal, because we were receiving data from the DSO on the day before. That's what you heard if you were in this room for the previous challenge. But even with that, we could experiment about how to share value fairly within a community. What does that mean? And for instance, I can ask you, in your opinion, who believes that to be part of a community, you absolutely need some PV panels in the room? Or is it not necessary? Who believes it's necessary? Nobody.
It's necessary now.
Yeah, and
because of the legislation.
Okay, so the first thing that we highlight is that if you don't have PV panels, you are also good for the community. If you have a community of all producers, it doesn't work. I mean, somebody has to absorb the production. The only thing is that you have to absorb at the right moment, right? So you have either a means to control your consumption, or you have a battery, or you have an electric car, but that has value. So it's not only the producer that creates value within a community, it's also the consumer that does the right gesture, that decides to consume at the right moment. So we experimented with all the calculation and the reward, and also how you present that through apps to the community, and that's already a challenge. And to answer maybe one of your questions is, we also determined that the gains are not enormous financially, especially if the grid tariffs are the same as today. Ideally, what happens within a community remains within the community, basically. Like what happens in Las Vegas remains in Las Vegas, right? Nobody needs to care. We should still pay, of course, for the grid. I mean, the grid is essential. The question is not to draw lines between neighbors outside of the grid. The grid is there and is absolutely crucial. Must be paid, but maybe it could be paid for the amount of energy that the community needs to import still, because the community will not be 100% self-sufficient. So in doing so, the community can do goods for the grid and avoid peaks and things like that, and that might be the basis of a new way of charging. So that can be experimented, and see what is the impact on the behavior of the community through the trading mechanisms.
Thanks a lot, Etienne. I would like to close kind of, before we go into Q&A, was on another point that we previously discussed. Is I was honestly, personally very surprised that Engie joined this, because they had so many trials and testing already out there, and so my question to Etienne was, why do you think this is different to everything you have done before, or what is the major difference for you? Maybe you could give this statement, maybe the same you said to me last time.
I'll try to remember it, but essentially there are so many ways to organize these kinds of communities, and also organize the fact that there might be more than one community in the same street. I mean, you might not want to join this neighbor because you dislike him or her, but you prefer this one. So what happens when 3 different communities compete with the grid capacity? How do you manage that? But so this challenge is interesting for us because there's a lot of liberty in the solutions that can be provided to manage the complexity. We made some experiment within the frame of the French regulation on energy communities, which, again, to summarize, does not allow to empower an energy community manager or a market operator to manage the consumption and production data itself. It has to go to the DSO because the DSO is recognized as the sole source of valid information for invoicing. Now, if you forget that, then you have so many options that can be validated as a good idea or less good idea. And I'd like to see success, but also I'd like to see how such system can be hacked in a way. And
that's the thing I was waiting for. That's the thing. So the major difference is, and this is also something, I've been working in energy for the last 14 years. There is nothing open source. And so all the frameworks, and this is the mantra that we kind of pushing here, is we want to bring the same type of innovation into energy, the same that there has been already in software the last 20 years. It's not that we're inventing anything new. It's just there is different type of open source licenses. Look at it. Only that enables to create an ecosystem. And that is kind of a baseline for us, what we're doing here. And therefore, kind of, I leave the statements here for teams we're looking, what we're expecting from the teams, because, for us, this whole thing is kind of a development. It's not just a trial. We have been developing this system for the last few years, and a lot of knowledge from all the partners went inside there. For us, it's very clear, regardless of the outcome, we will deploy it. We will go further and we will build it. And so I just want to leave you with this strong statement, not only to have the bounty of 10,000 euro per each team to be your motivator. We are rather interested in these statements to be your motivator. Yeah. So, and therefore, I think we have 3-4 minutes for Q&A. Yes. Please.
And there's a second session for Q&A, yeah?
Yes, so we have a second session after this. It's up there, I believe. And we have it's like an Ask Me Anything. So because the time was very tight, we have put 2 challenges into one presentation, specifically because of the video. So if there is more questions, we will be in the next session for Ask Me Anything. Yeah, please.
So you're working on it's an open source project what you're doing, but if we would join this track in the hackathon, are we obliged to use parts of your software, and which parts are those?
So it depends which challenge you go for.
So it would be the second challenge probably.
The app?
Yeah.
The app has nothing to do with the exchanges. The app is completely open. There is no software for that. The only software that exists there is a market design where you can stack exchanges on top of it. So we have been drawing, if you see the RP actually, so the only thing that can actually come to the app is kind of the freedom to decide from who the energy comes, but the registry could be on your side. So at what time, what price, and so forth. So and you can feed to the agent. So we don't define where the agent even sits, because there are so many different scenarios where the agent could sit. It could sit in the edge device, in a Docker container. It could sit in a cloud of an aggregator. So it really depends who you are.
But you have an API, and what's behind that?
Yes, this API will be published. There is documentation for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the API for now is purely for the trading strategies. Yeah. But at the end, this can also come from the app. So we don't want to decide where the app starts and finish, or the agent starts and finish. We don't make this definition yet, because it would enormously limit the solutions.
Thank you.
So we actually also inviting a couple of app providers. So there is an app provider in China for the Chinese market. So they already have an app. So we're also talking to crypto wallets, how to add other stuff to this, how to connect to this. So the architecture could be very different from each other. Yeah.
Yes, it works. I'm Ibe Kingma from a local energy community in Delft. Deelstroom Delft. That's why I answered the question on the solar panels. We put solar panels in a corporation on the gemeente, on the local municipality. But my question is entirely on another side. It's actually on your APIs, on the bids. It's not that relevant because it's a simulation, but as, let's say, a local prosumer, and suppose I would be able to make bids. So just the ideal world, let's say I would not want. I would want to have plenty of privacy for that bid, because a bid is even mostly like a gamble on my future meter value, more or less. You could view it like that. By the way, you could also use that for these memes. Just it's a gamble, it's a game. But the question is, did you think of a way to actually provide that privacy?
So absolutely. So
because I would not only want to have privacy for my meter values, but also for my bids.
So when you trade on an exchange right now, think about a financial exchange. You don't know where you buy from. You don't know who you trade from. So that's essentially in trades. And then, so you either make it completely anonymous, you don't know from who you buy, so meaning everyone needs to put a security up there. This is how exchanges work right now. They create an entry barrier. You don't need to know the other party, because you know they can cover it because there is a security on the other side. That's what the exchanges make. They bring liquidity. On the other side, they create an entry barrier. So that's one thing. And then you have a different choice, taking which clearing mechanism. You pay as clear, where you have one price for everyone, which is very social, or pay as bid. And now those different market mechanisms also allow different type of structure. So for example, in pay as bid, you can give attributes to every bids and ask that actually some people know each other when they hit each other. And the others are blind, so you can have a mixture between privacy and known to each other. We have tested all of that, and it's open source there. You can choose which market design. But we prefer the pay as bid simply because it gives, on the one side, as for the data scientists, it's a bigger challenge. On the other side, it doesn't really make a big difference to pay as clear from all the research. And it gives the possibility to create mini PPAs, because if you make a mini PPA for something, they can meet at this thing with each other, knowing the identity to each other. Yeah.
Let's wrap this up. Thank you so much, everyone.